Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is a video that needs to be made before Gen 8 arrives. As you see on the screen, this is the new starters for Generation 8, and I still play Pokemon at a competitive level. I mean, I haven't won any accomplishments or tournaments, championships. I'm not a professional pro player, but I do play competitive Pokemon, and I've been playing for a long time, and there's some things that really get on my nerves about the game in a competitive style. And when I refer to competitive, I'm referring to both the VGC and the Smogon style of competitive Pokemon. So when we get to a point where I have to refer to a specific style of competitive Pokemon, I will point it out. With that being said, let's dive in at number 10. So this one is more of a personal, and I think it's best to get the personal out of the way. Number 10, your Pokemon, your favorite Pokemon, isn't competitive or isn't viable in a competitive nature. Now what this means is that your favorite Pokemon probably sucks and it's just for casual play. And that's the unfortunate part about competitive Pokemon, because with 700 Pokemon, with 700 monsters, it's hard to keep track of who's the best and who, and I mean, it's not that hard, but when it comes to your favorites, it is kind of hard, because I really love Delphox, I really love Torterra, but unfortunately, those Pokemon, those Mons, are not competitive. They suck. If you try to bring them in, you could try to make it work, but when you go up against another competitive Pokemon player, they know the ins and outs and they know how to deal with weak Pokemon. And I sound like one of those villains in a Pokemon anime, but it's the cold hard truth that our favorite Pokemon isn't viable in a competitive nature. So number 9, it's more of a specific type of nature of a competitive Pokemon player, and if you fall under this category, hey, no hard feelings. I understand where you're coming from, but you know, it's getting annoying, and that is hiding techniques, guides, hiding your Pokemon team. I feel as if that is understandable within the within the nature of competitive Pokemon, but it comes as a burden, or it comes as a hindrance to other competitive Pokemon players, because with a game so both simple and complex, well, I want to say it's competitive Pokemon is both simple and complex. I'm going to talk about that later in this video, but finding answers for monsters, finding answers for teams, it's not that easy. Building a team is not that easy, and I feel as if this aspect of competitive Pokemon, as we go into Gen 8, I feel like it's soon going to die, because in Gen 7, in the meta, we saw a lot of teams, a lot of variety and versatility within these Pokemon teams. Some were completely the same, but when they were the same, we saw different items, different abilities. We saw basically diversity with the same Pokemon. I hope that makes sense, but from here on out, moving forward, I think this hiding technique and hiding Pokemon is slowly going to die out. But as of now, you know, I still run into players where I ask them if they can share their team, and the answer they give is no. And again, it's understandable, but with Gen 8 approaching, I feel like this aspect of competitive Pokemon will die soon. All right, number 8. So this is a funny one, because this is a true one. This is one I think is universal, where everyone can agree. Gimmicks. Gimmicks in this game, they work. No matter how hard you taunt, no matter how hard you defog, the opponent will have some gimmick. And you know, I'm kind of guilty of this. When it comes to Gastron, I remember Gastron has this storm drain, and I just love using that ability and manipulating the battlefield with it. But things like Baton Pass, no, those are gimmicks, and those gimmicks work. And I know some people would just say, well, just taunt, but after you taunt, the opponent's going to find some other way to continue using that gimmick. Hell, bring them back out, or bring them in and bring them back out. So gimmicks in this game, they just automatically work, and you have to find a way. You're forced to play the gimmick or defeat the gimmick as fast as possible. And I think something within competitive Pokemon should not be, I mean, Smogon, this is where I give respect to Smogon. Smogon shuts that shit down. They stop anything that's a gimmick, that's a broken gimmick. And unfortunately, VGC still has a lot of broken gimmicks, which is unfortunate, but hey, you gotta play around it. Remember in the beginning of the video where I said competitive Pokemon is simplistic and complex at the same time? Well, let me explain it, because this is number 7. Getting into Pokemon is complex. There's a lot of things that's just whoop-de-woo. You gotta learn a lot. You gotta memorize a lot. But once you do, winning a Pokemon game is simplistic. And now this was going to be originally number one, but number one is something that you all will agree. I mean, every competitive Pokemon player has to agree, literally. But back on topic is that, being a competitive Pokemon player for almost years, it was surprising to see an individual, and I will not name this individual, I will not share this image or show the video footage. I mean, the competitive Pokemon player is competitive. He was competitive, he was skilled, but guess what? He said in a post interview that he saw competitive Pokemon, he said he liked it, and then he wanted to test it out. He wanted to try it. And guess what? It took him 1 year to just win a championship. And that right there is my biggest gripe, because competitive Pokemon, while it is complex to get into, it's very simplistic, but then at the same time, there are other aspects that make it very complex when it comes to psychological side of competitive Pokemon, which is also something that I'll be talking about later in this video. But my point being is that there's proof of people just coming into competitive Pokemon with zero to little experience, and then they're just winning championships. That is a big middle finger to people who've been trying to win a championship, to people who love this competitive game, and it's really, really sad, and it goes to show that maybe some things are not complex. So some of you might think of this as a good thing, but really it's just kind of disrespectful. It truly, really is. It's like if you play this game for how God love, I mean, there's people I know who've played VGC style Pokemon, and they're not even in like the top 8. They're not even like in the finals. They can never make it in the finals just because their team is not good or their opponent is just better. But then when you have someone who has no experience and it just sweeps the competition, well, man, that just sucks. So this is 6 and 5. They're kind of together. That is the same monsters every time, and the meta equal boring. So what I mean by this, well, if you remember what I said in the beginning of the video, we would always see the same monsters, but we always see diversity within the same monsters. So, for example, Tapu Bulu. You would see Assault Vest Tapu Bulus. You would see Life Orb Tapu Bulus. You would see Leftovers Tapu Bulus, basically a Tapu Bulu with a different item. And while that's all fun, at the same time, it's still a Tapu Bulu. You're always going to see a Tapu Bulu or another Tapu. And in the beginning of the 2017 era with Pokemon Sun and Moon, you had to have a Tapu. You would be stupid not to have a Tapu. And then a little while, it was this whole Trick Room battle. And my goodness, that was just not fun to watch. It was just ZZZ sleeping, boring just to watch. And that's where I quietly left the meta, where I moved on to Smogon and well, I mean, I've always been playing Smogon, or Pokemon Showdown basically, but at that point I just could not care about the meta. 2017, I think there's gonna be some debate when it comes to the Pokemon Sun and Moon competitively. Some people are gonna love this era, some people will not, and I'm one of those people who do not love this era. So number 6 and number 5, basically, when it comes to competitive Pokemon, you will always see the top tiers. You're always going to see a Tapu. Now, number 4, this is pretty funny. Number 4, monsters having different types from what they are. So, on the screen, you're gonna see a Gyarados with Earthquake and a Crunch, a Ground type, a Dark type. I'm laughing because it's just so true. Why is a water flying monster having different types? It is ridiculous. Now, in some cases, it makes sense for like a dragon Pokemon to have like maybe an Earthquake or something, but a water flying monster having Crunch or Thunder Wave is just crazy, and it defeats the purpose of monster type defeats this monster type, It really is just absurd, and it goes into this whole complexity of what defeats what. And then when you have a water flying monster having a ground type move, it just sucks. It really does, because you wouldn't expect it. Well, most competitive Pokemon players wouldn't expect it, the new ones, but still, it proves my point where it defeats the purpose of having a fire fighting, being defeated by a water flying Pokemon, because that water flying Pokemon has a ground type. So it just really, in that aspect, is not too fun to deal with. It defeats all the purposes of having types. So number 2, the psychology of competitive Pokemon, overthinking versus simplicity. I'm laughing because this is such a funny image. And I mentioned it in the beginning of the video, that we'll talk about the psychology. We're here. Sometimes in competitive Pokemon, you can overthink things. You can think 20 steps ahead, and then your opponent's just going to think maybe 2 steps ahead, and then all of a sudden the game changes. That part of competitive Pokemon is completely funny. I am caught in that all the time. I'm always thinking maybe 10 steps ahead, maybe 8 steps ahead, maybe 20 steps ahead. What do I have to do here? How do I get rid of this Pokemon? How do I get rid of that Pokemon? What's my opponent thinking? I'm just thinking, and that is what makes competitive Pokemon so fun, is that this is the part of the complexity. But then at sometimes your opponent may not even be thinking at all. They may be at a simplistic level. And that's just hilarious, because you can OD, we call that in fighting game overdose. You can do too much. And if you do too much, it's gonna backfire on you. And I know a lot of you competitive Pokemon players have done that before. In the past, when I went up to my opponent and I asked them why did they do that, how did they predict I was gonna do that, one guy told me, he said, "I didn't know you were gonna do that. I guess I was lucky." And I looked at him straight in the face, like, bruh. So I overdosed. I overthought. And it's really, really funny, but at sometimes, it can get super annoying, and that part of competitive Pokemon I just don't like. Number 1, and every time I think about this, it just pisses me off: the unnecessary grind to build a competitive team. Do you know how many hours, how many days it takes to build a full competitive team? All 6 Pokemon. Hell, because it's VGC, you have to have 4 Pokemon. So it's just like, it's like WTF, The grind to build competitive Pokemon is unnecessary. Oh my goodness, I cannot tell you how long I spent building my team. And then months passed, I realized that my team was just not suitable for the current meta, and I had to go make a new team, and I said, F it. I'm not doing that. I'm just going to take a break from competitive Pokemon, which I took a long break from VGC competitive Pokemon. And again, I'm not a professional player, but a lot of pro players have been exposed. And it's not by a lot of people, it's just by one guy here on YouTube, and it's an unnecessary exposure. It's really not necessary to expose pro players, because they're not hacking their Pokemon for a battle advantage. They're not stupid to add extra points or extra IV in their monsters. That's stupid. That is wrong, and they're not doing that. What they're doing is basically hacking their Pokemon. They're making their Pokemon so they can skip the 1 week that requires them to make a Pokemon. And I can't believe I just said requires, because honestly, the fact that you have to build, it takes so long to create a team that may not be good for the meta, a team that you may not like in the future, it's just bull. It is completely bull. And in the beginning, Nintendo and the company heads that were running competitive Pokemon VGC, they didn't do anything to the hackers, which was a thumbs up from me, leave them alone. But then along the way, this whole revolution of hacking Pokemon suddenly became so big that Nintendo are taking action now, or the company heads, the people at VGC, which is, I hope going into Gen 8, they stop and they just accept that, hey, hacking the Pokemon is better than spending at least 1 week when you have other responsibilities. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. So these are the 10 things I don't like about competitive Pokemon, both regarding just in general competitive Pokemon, some in VGC, some with regards to Smogon, but in general, competitive Pokemon is still fun. And going into Gen 8, I hope some of these things really just die down and we get like a fresh start to the competitive scene. I am Fan Talk, and I'll see you all in the next video.